Welcome back, everyone. I'm the Bad Luck Gamer, and today we're here with another Pathfinder Bites, where I try to describe to you a class in under 10 minutes. So let's get to it. Today we're talking about Bard. Bard is a occult spellcaster who mostly focuses on supporting by buffing or debuffing, buffing your allies, debuffing the enemies, obviously, or using a variety of good charisma-based skills, but they are a lot more than that. They're a lot more, I would say, dynamic than other spellcasters are, and we'll get into that here in just a little bit. But first, let me lay out the basics. So there's three main aspects to the Bard. They're an occult spellcaster, occult repertoire spellcaster, if you hate the Vancian style preparing your spell slots. They have a muse that allows them to alter their overall game style, and of course they have their composition spells and predominantly their composition cantrips that they can use to buff their allies or even debuff the enemies, and they also benefit from those buffs themselves, making them very good and a very useful teammate to have, but it's so much more than that. So let's start off with the occult tradition first of all. So occult magic is very much, it's got the buffing and debuffing aspects of the divine tradition, while simultaneously having some of the unique illusion or manipulation effects from arcane, making it a very good and dynamic school that, though does focuses more on saves than attack rolls, thanks to Dark Archive, it got a fair amount of straight up attacks in it as well, making it a very good and a very solid tradition overall. In fact, I think if any tradition needs more help right now, it's divine. So with bards, you're already pretty set off with occult casting. Speaking of spellcasting, let's talk about one of the other major components of Bard, which is the composition spells, which allows you to use certain focus spells or certain focus cantrips that you can use to buff or debuff enemies, or buff your allies, debuff your enemies. Please don't buff your enemies, and as well as some other really great effects. Inspire Courage, for instance, gives you your allies and yourself a +1 bonus on attack rolls, damage rolls, and as well, you get a +1 bonus to status bonus to your save effects against fear effects, which is overall pretty good. But not only are they really good, they're, with many of these spells, especially Inspire Courage, which all bards get access to, you can do this every round. It's just a singular action every round to maintain this buff. And they can buff a wide variety of things, whether it's skill checks with Inspire Competence, or even boosting AC with Inspire Defense. In fact, one of the best parts about Bard is a lot of these effects are cantrips, so you can do them over and over again, and a lot of the more focused spells are either for greater effects or for lingering composition, which allows you to extend one of these for 3 or 4 rounds, and it just costs a focus point, and then you don't have to maintain or sustain this effect essentially every round, freeing your actions up for other things you can do on your turn. And least but not least are the muses. These are very important for bards because they overall help determine the kind of feats you have access to, as well as the kind of playstyles you probably should strive for given the feats that you're given. Granted, most bards are pretty flexible in what they can do, but these muses will definitely help you along the way. The Enigma Muse is very focused on recall knowledge actions, allowing you to be probably one of the best recall knowledge classes in the game, and giving you access to a multi or an omni lore called Bardic Lore that allows you to roll a recall knowledge on pretty much everything. It's incredibly solid, and not only that, but they get access to True Strike, making them one of the more accurate bards that just gets added to their repertoire and they always have access to. Next up is the Maestro Bard, and they're the ones who are mostly focused on enhancing their composition spells. They get access to a couple unique composition spells, and they're the ones that give you access to lingering composition, meaning that a lot of these spells that you're using you can maintain for multiple rounds at just the cost of a singular focus point, meaning that they don't have to essentially waste an action like all the other bards do, with one of their most powerful effects being the composition cantrips. After that is the Polymath Bard, and their major focus is they have a lot of skill abilities, especially with versatile performance, allowing them to use their performance skill for a lot of other charisma-based checks, and they can even use their proficiency in performance for skill feats in diplomacy, intimidation, and deception, making them very versatile. But beyond their skill proficiencies, they actually get unique access to certain kind of spell functionalities, allowing them to tweak their signature spells as they are a repertoire caster, even getting something like a spell book that can add a new spell to their spell list, or even give them additional signature spells. It's a very handy way to play Bard, and honestly the more caster focused of the Bard Muses. And the last one, which was added in the Advanced Player's Guide, is the Warrior Muse, which makes Bard essentially the best martial style spellcaster you could hope for. Their martial performance allows them to become trained in all martial weapons and eventually expert in all martial weapons as well. They get access to a lot of feats and abilities that help them in combat, even ability or feats that give you something like an attack of opportunity, which is incredibly good, and it blends in very well with the Bard, which is very surprising for some of the casters. And since they get more health than a wizard or witch, they are probably one of your best options if you do want to play a more martial style spellcaster. So finally, some tips and advice I give for anyone who's trying out a Bard. Charisma is your main stat, and unlike a lot of other classes, charisma is a very strong focus. While a wizard might be able to get around having a slightly lower intelligence, maxing out at maybe a 20 by the end of the campaign, a Bard uses their charisma for so much. Not only just for their spellcasting, which is indeed important, but as well for their performance skill, which they actually use in some of their features for grander effect. And since it's so reliant on that, you're also going to want to invest in your performance skill as well. But since the Bard starts off with so many skills, and if you go with the polymath, you have so many more options for how to use your performance, it's a really good investment. The 6th level feat, Dirge of Doom, is probably one of the most powerful effects you can have in the game, because what it does is it just makes all enemies feared in a 30-foot emanation around you. And since the Frightened condition is one of the most powerful debuffs in the game, not only reducing their AC and their attacks, but also their saves, which makes them actually weaker to a lot of your spells. Not only that, but it is a status penalty, which means it stacks with things like flat-footed, meaning your allies can get a very likely -3 to enemy AC during their turn. Now, I do need to mention that Dirge of Doom is strong, and while it doesn't have a save, it still does not affect enemies who are mindless or who are immune to mental effects or fear. So that is something to keep in mind. It's not super great against mindless undead, but against a grand majority of enemies in the monster book, this is an incredibly power effect, and it can enhance your own spellcasting, making you probably one of the best spellcasters for making enemies failure saves, which is really, really strong. Now, I know a lot of spells in the occult line really rely on will saves, but you do need to focus on having a wide variety of spells. Grim Tendrils, Rave Enfeeblement are really good spells early game for your first level spells, and even Vomit Swarm at level, or for your second level spells, are very strong. It's just, they allow you to kind of diversify your effects, because some enemies will be strong against will. The great thing is that on average, a lot of martial style enemies have will as their medium or low stat, which is very good for you, and it allows you to use your effects a lot of the time. But just be mindful, do not stack up on will save based spells. You're going to want some versatility in your spellcasting list, especially when it comes to affecting enemies. Make sure you pick up the Bone Mott feats from the diplomacy skill feats, and because of versatile performance from the polymath muse, you can pick this up without even becoming trained in diplomacy. Bone Mott is a bard's best friend, as we were talking about will saves earlier. The base success from Bone Mott reduces enemy will saves by -2, which is incredibly powerful and something that you definitely need, since you are a predominantly will save based caster, and something that you very much should keep in mind. And that's going to be it for this video. Hopefully I kept under my time. I did pause a lot, so I'm hoping this is under 10 minutes. But how do you guys think? I know the last couple videos were very much more focused on like tips for those classes or things I feel like people didn't need. But this time around, I wanted to take a more basic approach to how this goes, because I'm understanding now that these kind of videos are really good for people who are choosing their classes more than for people who are learning about their classes. So if it helped you, let me know. But that's going to be it for me. Leave a subscription if you would like, or you know, like the video if it helped you out. It really helps out the channel, and we're doing really great because of it. And that's gonna be it for me. Thank you all so much for watching. Good luck with your games. Leave the bad luck to me, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye.